Hi there. I can't find my tripod, so my apologies in advance for like this sketchily holding my phone while I'm recording this. Um, that's a bit of an intro. So, I'm Jen, and this is not what I usually have been posting on this particular channel. But what I wanted to share is something a bit different. If you can hear in my voice, it sounds like I've got a little bit of a cold or that I'm sick. And the truth is, yes, I am sick. And I wanted to talk about that. So, for those of you who don't know me, like you can kind of look at some of the other content out of this channel. I am a craniosacral therapist. I've done healing work and trauma work for a really long time. And that's not what I'm going to talk about. Although I kind of am, but I'm kind of not. One of the things I wanted to do was share a little bit of my own personal journey. And about 13 years ago, 12, 13 years ago, I experienced for the first time, well, I had experienced, I guess, chronic pain before. I spent pretty much my early 20s, most of my 20s in chronic pain. But it wasn't until about 12, 13 years ago that I got sick. I got a virus that wouldn't go away and persisted and basically developed into what is now called ME/CFS, which I don't even basically it's also known as chronic fatigue syndrome. And for those who have also perhaps you've experienced long COVID, there's a lot of research now showing that there are a lot of similarities. And so there's been a whole lot of awareness around ME/CFS and different chronic illnesses. And I guess the thing that I've been seeing is at the same time, during the 2020s, the world has seen like an explosion of like online courses and people trying to help people and all that stuff. And I just want to be clear that that is not what this is. my my intention of sharing is actually sharing some of my own personal journey and personal experiences, because one of the things that I have found really helpful personally, and I think that is really important, is that we need a real example of um, other people's experiences. And I think it's also important to have some diversity of people's experiences and voices and situations and some of the things that they have gone through. That is separate from people trying to sell you stuff to fix the thing, because specifically with ME/CFS, and personally I found that there's really nothing you can like, you know, do. Take all the things, like I'll talk about my own healing journey and things that have helped and things that have not been helpful. But I just kind of wanted to speak in just like a real way about what this experience is like, and be as real as possible. And also I think it's really important to show and share like how the psychological process of it, because it's so much of not only the part of the disease itself, but it's also part of how it impacts, a really huge part of how it impacts like our lives in a practical way. So yeah, that's a very short little intro. So a little bit about me is, I'd mentioned, so my first dance with this was about 12, 13 years ago. There wasn't a lot of information in the medical community. I had all these tests that were done that basically showed that, other than some mineral deficiencies, that I was otherwise healthy. But I, of course, couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't function. I couldn't go to work. The doctor could see that I was basically felt like I was dying and believed that, but like literally he was like, I just don't know what else I can do for you. Which fair enough, right? Because that is the limitations of the that particular kind of profession, right? Or that kind of lens. So um, yeah, but of course it was devastating and difficult, and I came out of that last appointment with my doctor so angry that there was like nothing that could be done, and also wanting that there like that, you know, feeling angry that there should be something done, or at least acknowledged, you know, like if there's something physically wrong with you because you feel like there's something physically wrong with you. But I, at the same time, I had a realization that I was asking a system and a human to do something that they were not actually capable of doing or designed to do. And the truth of that was really hard, but also made me realize that I was also putting my energy into like the wrong place, and I was expecting someone else to fix something that they like literally couldn't. And so that was difficult. And I also realized I would have to take matters into my own hands, which I did. And I did all the things. I changed my diet. I changed my life. I mean, I was already an active person, and it's one of the reasons why it affected me so much. But after years of, you know, like doing all the things, the vitamins, the minerals, the supplement, like, you know, you guys know if you if you're watching this at all, and you've been there, you know. So the crazy thing was, I needed a break from all of this healing shit and junk and stuff. That was going nowhere. The weather was starting to get bad, and I was in Canada, and it was cold and wet, and it was not helping. And so I thought, you know, I just need a little break. I left. I went down south to a little beach town, and in that experience, it was about a month and a half there. By the time I came back to work at the end of December, early January, something really profound had shifted, and I wasn't exactly sure what it was, but it was life altering in a very positive way, and my symptoms for the first time were like gone, and I had energy back, and I had like life force back. And so over the next few years, I systematically spent more and more and more time in this little beach town until I moved there, and was pretty well for about 8 years. At the time, I was studying craniosacral therapy. I became a craniosacral therapist, and I would say about 8 years in remission, until about, and we're here, until about maybe 3 years ago when I started to get sick, and I had a couple bouts where I was exposed to mold, and I got really, really sick from that. And eventually had to move out of the little town I was living in, and kind of went through this like really challenging time, physically, spiritually, emotionally. And I would have to say since June, so the last 8 or 9 months, my symptoms have really come back, and I have been experiencing crashes for the first time in a long time. I experienced pretty rapid weight gain in June in a few weeks, all sorts of crazy things. So I wanted to, and I think I'm actually just going to have to do a little handheld. There we go, because that was starting to get a little uncomfortable. The reason why I'm sharing this is I want to share where I am now, because I'm actually, I just spent the last week in bed with some pretty severe health issues. And I have been coming back to some of the pieces that I was orientating to during like that 8 years that I was in remission and feeling really well and um, had healed. I actually still don't get like a lot of chronic pain other than the ME/CFS flare-ups is when I obviously go into like a full-blown pain and sick and all the things. But in the meanwhile, like in between, um, I get I get to experience some wellness. And I there's a lot of parallels to what's happening immunologically with ME/CFS and with a lot of the work that I have done previously and research around pain and trauma. And so I've been kind of coming back to this more and more, and I'm finding it really helpful. And so what I wanted to do is share some of those things that have been really helpful for me and actually start to just share that in a more public way. And again, my intention is not, this is not about preaching, it's just really about sharing my own personal experience. But having been in that 8 years of wellness and like remission, and I want to also talk about the psychology of coming back into where I am now, having been there and thought that I, had cured it. Surprise! But I really just want to have some conversations about this in a real way and talk about the experience in a real way, and also instill and remind myself, for myself, but also I think for others, that I think that there is a lot of hope in what is a very hopeless disease and illness. So I want to talk about that, and I want to talk about it in a real way and not like in a toxic positivity BS kind of way, because I actually think in my experience that that's more harmful than anything. So anyway, if you're interested in that, come along for the ride. I'd love to have you. And signing off. Ciao for now. Take care. Bye.